Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. Mishnah Yomi is continuing in Orlah in the first parak at Mishnah Dalet. Ilan shene'ekar, a tree was uprooted, v'nishtayr bo shorish, but it's still attached to the ground by one shorish, one root. Potter, you don't have to start counting Orlah over again if the tree was already 5-6 years old. There's no issue of Orlah or Revai here. But how big does this one surviving root attached to the ground need to be? Rabban Gamliel Omer, Mishom Rabbi Elazar ben Yehuda Ish Bar Tuta Kimachat Shel Miton. It's like a needle, but it's a needle of miton, a needle of stretching, used to stretch out a garment. So it's actually kind of bigger than the needles we think of. It's more like a pin, something a little bigger than a regular needle. Some of the Mefarshim say this is actually talking about a grapevine. So grapevine would need this pin-sized needle, but a bigger tree might need a bigger root. Depending on the size of it, it would need something that it can draw nourishment through. Great, let's move on to Mishnah. Hey, Ilan Shenekar Uvo Berecha. So in Ilan, here we're talking about grapevines again. It was uprooted, but it's still attached through the ground to the next door grapevine, because one of the things they did, and we learned about this in Kilayim by Kilaya Kerem. By grapevines, you could take a branch, a tendril of the vine, and then bury it underground some distance. You're stretching it away from the original plant, and it would actually grow new roots and then pop out of the ground again. So you could basically build a second grapevine out of the original one by training some of the branches underground. That's berecha. V'hu chaya mimenu. So the first grapevine, the parent grapevine, got uprooted, but it can still draw nourishment to live from the brecha, from the branch that went underground and has started taking root. Chazra hazikaina liot kavrecha. So the original, the older grapevine can be like the brecha, so it doesn't lose its count because it's still attached through this branch to a root structure underground. Hivricha shana achar shana, so he continued doing bericha for year after year. So he had an original parent grapevine, then he took a branch, trained it underground, it grew roots, and then the next year he did the same thing from the new plant, did Hevricha and trained a branch underground, and then again, so he has this chain of grapevines. Now, while they're connected through the Hevricha, all of them have the Orlah status, have the count of the original. But the Mishnah says V'nifsaka, but then he severs the connection, the underground branch, Mone Bishasha Nifsaka. So the original still has the count of the original whenever it was first planted, but the offshoots, these new plants created through Hivricha, you have to start counting when you cut the Hivricha, the connection to the older plants. The Mishnah continues, Sipuk Hagafanim, the Sipuk al Gabe Sipuk. This is a similar concept to Hivricha, but this is, Bartner explains, you're taking a long branch from one grape plant, basically taking a vine and stretching it from plant A over to plant B, and then being grafting it on. So you're stretching out a vine from plant A to plant B and making a connection between them. So afal pi shehivricha ba'aretz, hivrichan ba'aretz, even though you're connecting them underground, also mutter, meaning the fruits, the grapes growing on this particular vine, even if they're being connected to a newer plant, they go after the older plant, and you can eat these grapes because they're still attached. Lamaisa, this vine is still attached to the original older grapevine, even though it's now also attached to a newer plant. Rabbi Meir Omer Makom Shekocha Yofe Mutter, in a place where its strength is good, is strong, it is mutter, meaning this branch that's now attached to a new plant, it's really drawing its nourishment, its liquid from the original plant, which is older, then it's mutter. We don't have to go after the account of the new plant. But if it's growing nourishment, if it's taking nourishment from the new plant, not the old plant, then it would be usher because we count it as going after the newer plant. The Mishnah concludes, V'ken Berecha Shnifsaka Pimalea Perut. What if you stretched a branch over from an old plant, it's already 5 or 6 years old, and it was full of grapes, but then he cut it, and so now it's only attached to the new plant. Im hosif b'metayim aser, if these fruits now grow 1/200th of their size while they're attached only to the younger plant, the new plant, within the first 3 years, it's aser mishum orlah. What's going on is these grapes, they grew most of their growth attached to the old plant. It's already 5 or 6 years old or more, but now they're attached to the new plant, and they've grown 1/200th, so that new growth is Orlah, as we're going to see the shear to be Mevatel Orlah, Rabbosai, is 1 in 200. Shkoyach, a good moed.